Welcome back to our channel. Before we begin, here's a quick note. The story you're about to hear is an original fictional tale inspired by Keanu Reeves's public image. While it draws on themes of kindness, courage, and hope, the events are entirely imagined for storytelling purposes. The rain fell softly over Los Angeles as another evening settled across the city. Traffic lights reflected on the wet streets like scattered stars, and people hurried home without noticing the man quietly walking along the sidewalk in a simple black jacket and jeans. To most people, he looked like any other traveler returning after a long day, but that man was Keanu Reeves. After months of filming an intense action movie, he had finally found a rare evening without cameras, interviews, or crowded premieres. The silence felt refreshing. For the first time in weeks, he could simply enjoy being another face in the city. Little did he know that this ordinary walk would become the beginning of a story no one could have imagined. As Keanu passed an old neighborhood, bookstore preparing to close, something unusual caught his attention. Small white envelope rested on the bench. Outside the entrance, there was no stamp, no address, only 3 handwritten words. For Mr. Reeves, he stopped. The street around him remained busy, yet somehow the envelope seemed completely untouched, as if someone had been waiting for only one person to find it. He looked around. No one seemed interested. A young couple laughed across the street. An elderly man waited for a bus. The bookstore owner had already turned off most of the lights. Curious, Keanu picked up the envelope. Inside was a single folded page. The handwriting was neat but slightly shaky. If kindness ever reaches you, please don't stop reading. Someone's future depends on it. Keanu frowned gently. There was no name, only one sentence beneath it. Meet me tomorrow at 6 o'clock. The old lighthouse by the ocean. Nothing more, no explanation, no signature. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. For most people, it would have seemed like a strange prank, but something about those words felt painfully sincere. That night, sleep refused to come. Keanu sat beside his apartment window, watching the city lights shimmer beneath the clouds. He had spent years meeting thousands of people, fans, journalists, dreamers, strangers. Sometimes people simply wanted a photograph. Sometimes they wanted advice. Sometimes they only wanted someone to listen, but this letter felt different. It carried fear, hope, and urgency. His phone buzzed. His longtime assistant, Daniel, appeared on the screen. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. Keanu hesitated. "I found something unusual." He described the mysterious letter. Daniel laughed softly. "You really think someone expects you to meet them alone?" "I don't know," Keanu admitted. "It could be nothing." "It could." Daniel paused before speaking again. "Or it could be someone who genuinely needs help." Keanu looked at the letter once more. "That's exactly what worries me." The following evening, heavy clouds covered the coastline. The old lighthouse stood alone above crashing waves. Abandoned years earlier, most tourists never visited anymore. At exactly 6 o'clock, Keanu arrived. The parking area was almost empty. Only an old bicycle leaned against a weathered fence. The wind carried the sound of the ocean, mixing with distant thunder. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, a little girl, no older than 12, slowly stepped out from behind the lighthouse. She wore a faded blue sweater, much too large for her. Her shoes were soaked from the rain. Yet despite everything, she smiled politely. "You came." Keanu knelt slightly so they could speak eye to eye. "I think you wrote me a letter." She nodded. "My name is Lily." "Are you here alone?" She looked toward the sea before answering. For now, those 2 words immediately unsettled him. Children rarely spoke like that. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Lily reached into her backpack. She carefully removed a small wooden box tied with faded red ribbon. "My grandfather told me if I ever got scared," she swallowed, "should find the kindest person I could." Keanu accepted the little box with both hands. It felt surprisingly heavy. "What is this?" "I promise not to open it." "You've never looked inside?" She shook her head. He said only someone who chooses kindness before. Curiosity deserves to know. The rain became heavier. Lightning flashed across the ocean. Before Keanu could ask another question, a black SUV slowly appeared. At the end of the road, Its headlights remained off. The vehicle stopped without anyone stepping. Outside, Lily's smile disappeared instantly. "They found us." Keanu's heartbeat quickened. "Who found you?" She whispered only 2 words. "The collectors." The SUV remained motionless. No doors opened. No windows lowered. Only silence. Keanu instinctively stepped slightly in front of Lily. It's okay," he said calmly. "We'll figure this out." But Lily gently tugged his sleeve. "They don't want to hurt you. They only want the box." "The box?" She nodded. "My grandfather spent years protecting it. What is inside?" "I don't know. But he said if the wrong people opened it, many lives could be destroyed." Before Keanu could process her words, another surprise unfolded. The bookstore owner from the previous evening slowly walked toward them carrying an umbrella. Keanu recognized him immediately. "You?" The old man smiled sadly. "I was hoping you'd come. You left the letter." "Kia, who are these people?" The old man's face turned pale. "They've been searching for that box for over 20 years." Keanu looked from the mysterious vehicle to the frightened little girl, and finally to the weathered wooden box resting in his hands. What had begun as an ordinary evening had become something far greater than chance. Somewhere inside that forgotten lighthouse, hidden beneath decades of silence, waited a truth that would test courage, loyalty, and compassion in ways none of them could imagine. And as thunder echoed across the dark sea, Keanu realized one thing with complete certainty. He could still walk away, but if he did, Lily would have no one left to trust. The storm grew stronger as thunder rolled across the ocean. Rain pounded against the old lighthouse, while the black SUV remained parked near the entrance, its dark silhouette barely visible through the heavy mist. Keanu tightened his grip on the wooden box. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. The elderly bookstore owner finally broke the silence. "We don't have much time," Lily looked nervously toward the road. "They never stopped searching." Keanu glanced at the mysterious vehicle. "Again, if they're after this box, why haven't they come for it?" The old man sighed. "Because they don't know if it's real." Before Keanu could ask another question, the bookstore owner pointed toward the lighthouse. "Inside, quickly." The 3 hurried through the rusted metal door just as another flash of lightning illuminated the coastline. The lighthouse had been abandoned for years. Dust covered the wooden stairs. Old ropes hung from broken beams. The smell of salt water and aging timber filled the air. The old man carefully closed the heavy door behind them. "My name is Arthur," he said. "I knew Lily's grandfather. For nearly 40 years." Keanu studied his face. "Then, tell me what's happening." Arthur nodded slowly. "Years ago, Lily's grandfather wasn't protecting money. He wasn't protecting jewels. He was protecting something much more valuable." Keanu looked down at the wooden box. "What could possibly be worth all this?" Arthur answered quietly. "The truth." Those words echoed through the empty lighthouse. Before anyone could continue, a loud knock shook the front door. One knock, then another, then silence. Lily grabbed Keanu's sleeve. "They're here." Arthur led them up a narrow staircase to the top of the lighthouse. There, hidden behind an old bookshelf, was a tiny room that looked untouched by time. A small desk, several faded photographs, a worn-out journal, and a dusty lantern. Arthur lit the lantern, filling the room with warm light. "You deserve to know everything," he said. He opened the journal carefully. Inside were handwritten notes stretching back. Decades, maps, letters, names, and newspaper clippings about ordinary families who had quietly received anonymous help during difficult times. Keanu looked confused. "What is all this?" Arthur smiled gently. Lily's grandfather believed the greatest heroes are the ones no one ever hears about. For over 30 years, he secretly helped struggling families, paid medical bills, rebuilt homes after disasters, funded scholarships, and supported small communities. But he never wanted recognition. He only wanted kindness to continue. Keanu turned another page. Every act of generosity had been carefully recorded, not for fame, not for money, but so future helpers would know where kindness was still needed. It wasn't a treasure map. It was something far more Meaningful, a roadmap of hope. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I never knew, Arthur nodded. He wanted you to discover it when you were ready. But after he passed away, rumors spread that he had hidden enormous wealth. So people started searching. They thought this little box contained fortune. Keanu looked at the wooden box again. So they were chasing the wrong treasure. Arthur smiled sadly. Exactly. But greed rarely listens to the truth. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed downstairs. Someone had forced open the lighthouse door. Heavy footsteps slowly climbed the staircase. Lily froze. Arthur quickly extinguished the lantern. The room disappeared into darkness. Only the sound of footsteps remained. Closer, closer, closer. Keanu whispered, "Stay behind me." The footsteps stopped outside the hidden room for several seconds. Complete silence. Then, the strangers walked away. Everyone waited without moving. Only after the footsteps disappeared did Arthur breathe again. They're searching every floor. Nearly an hour passed before the storm finally began to weaken. Arthur reopened the journal. There is one more secret. He reached beneath the desk and removed another envelope. Unlike the first letter, this one had Lily's name written across the front. My grandfather left this? Arthur nodded. He asked me to give it to you only when someone worthy stood beside you. Lily looked toward Keanu. Arthur smiled. I believe that person has arrived. With trembling hands, Lily opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. She began reading aloud. My dear Lily, if you are reading this, it means life has become difficult. You may hear people talk about treasure. They will search for gold. They will search for fortune. Let them. The real treasure has never been hidden inside this box. It lives inside every person who chooses kindness when nobody is watching. If one day you meet someone willing to protect others without expecting anything in return, trust them. Give them the responsibility to continue what I started. Kindness is the only inheritance that grows larger each time it is shared. By the time Lily finished reading, tears streamed down her face. Keanu quietly wiped his own eyes. The room remained silent except for the distant sound of waves. As dawn approached, Arthur carefully untied the faded red ribbon around the wooden box. For years, he whispered, I believed today would never come. Slowly, he lifted the lid. Inside were no diamonds, no gold, no stacks of money, only 3 simple objects. An old compass, a worn fountain pen, and dozens of handwritten names. Keanu picked up the list carefully. Each name belonged to someone facing hardship: families, children, veterans, teachers, caregivers, people who had quietly dedicated their lives to helping others, but were now in need themselves. Arthur smiled. These are the people your grandfather hoped someone would never forget. Keanu stared at the names for a long moment. Then he looked at Lily. I think I finally understand. She smiled through her tears. My grandfather wasn't asking someone to guard a box. He was asking someone to carry hope. Just then, Keanu noticed something unexpected. Hidden beneath the final page was another folded note. Unlike the others, it was addressed directly to him. His name had been written years before they had ever met. Keanu slowly unfolded the paper, his heart racing. The first line made him stop breathing for a moment. Dear stranger, if fate has placed this letter in your hands, then your greatest journey is only beginning. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds. But inside the lighthouse, a new mystery had just begun, one that would change not only Keanu's life, but the lives of countless strangers waiting for someone to believe in them. The first rays of sunlight poured through the cracked windows of the old lighthouse, painting the dusty floor in warm golden light. Keanu stood silently, holding the final letter. His name had been written on the envelope years before he had ever met Lily or Arthur. It seemed impossible. For several long moments he simply stared at it. Arthur smiled gently. Open it, Lily nodded. My grandfather always believed that kindness has a way of finding the right person. Keanu slowly unfolded the yellowed paper. The handwriting matched the other letters. Steady, patient, hopeful, he began to read. Dear stranger, if this letter has reached you, then I may no longer be here. You are probably wondering why your name is written above words I penned years ago. The answer is simple. I never knew your name. I simply believed that one day someone with a generous heart would stand where you are standing now. Arthur told me that if such a person ever appeared, he would write that person's name himself before handing over this letter. If you are reading these words, then you have already passed the only test that matters. You chose compassion before curiosity. Keanu lowered the letter. His eyes met Arthur's. So, you wrote my name. Arthur smiled. Only after watching you protect Lily, without asking what was inside the box. Keanu quietly folded the letter again. For the first time since arriving at the lighthouse, he understood. This had never been about proving who he was. It had been about revealing who he chose to be. The three remained inside the lighthouse for another hour, carefully reading through the journal. Every page told a different story. A widowed father whose rent had been secretly paid, a young musician who received an anonymous scholarship, an elderly teacher whose home had quietly been repaired after a fire, a struggling family who discovered groceries on their doorstep every week without ever knowing who had sent them. None of the people knew the identity of the one who had helped them. There were no photographs, no interviews, no awards, only kindness. Keanu smiled softly. This is better than any treasure. Arthur nodded. Exactly. Lily carefully closed the journal. My grandfather always said kindness should travel farther than your name. As they prepared to leave, the mysterious black SUV was still parked outside. Its windows were dark. Its engine was silent. Keanu took a deep breath. I'll talk to them. Arthur looked concerned. Be careful. Keanu walked calmly across the wet ground until he reached the vehicle. For several seconds nothing happened. Then the driver's window lowered. Inside sat a middle-aged man with tired eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. You've been following us, Keanu said. The man nodded. Yes. Why? The stranger looked toward the lighthouse. We worked with Lily's grandfather many years ago. Keanu frowned. Then why chase the box? The man's voice cracked with regret. Because after he passed away, rumors spread that the list had been replaced with hidden wealth, we argued. We stopped trusting one another. Greed slowly replaced the mission. He lowered his head. And by the time we realized the truth, we had already become the kind of people he never wanted us to be. Silence filled the morning air. Finally, Keanu held out the journal. If that's true, then help us finish what he started. The man stared in disbelief. After everything? Keanu smiled gently. Everyone deserves a chance to choose differently. Tears filled the man's eyes. For the first time in years, he accepted forgiveness instead of suspicion. Several months passed. The lighthouse became something entirely different. Instead of standing abandoned beside the sea, it became a small community center. Volunteers arrived every weekend. Students organized book drives. Doctors offered free medical checkups. Local artists taught children to paint. Retired teachers helped struggling students after school. The journal was never displayed publicly. Instead, it quietly guided acts of kindness throughout the community, one family at a time, one person at a time. Lily became the youngest volunteer. Arthur reopened his bookstore. A small shelf near the entrance held a simple wooden sign. It read, "Take a book. Leave hope." People from every neighborhood began donating books, school supplies, blankets, and handwritten encouragement for complete strangers. No one asked who had started the tradition. They simply joined it. One quiet afternoon, Keanu returned to the lighthouse alone. The ocean looked peaceful. Children laughed outside while volunteers planted flowers nearby. He sat on the same wooden bench where everything had begun. Lily walked over, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. You still think about that first letter? Keanu smiled. Every day. She looked toward the horizon. My grandfather always believed ordinary moments change lives. Keanu laughed softly. He was right. Lily reached into her backpack. I found something. She handed him a fresh white envelope. Keanu looked surprised. For me? She shook her head with a smile. No, for someone else. On the front were 4 handwritten words, for whoever needs hope. Keanu looked at her proudly. The tradition continues. She nodded. It always will. Years later, people would remember the lighthouse not because of hidden treasure or mysterious stories. They remembered it because strangers walked in carrying heavy burdens and often walked out carrying renewed hope. Nobody ever spoke about the wooden box again. Its purpose had already been fulfilled. The real treasure had never been locked inside wood. It lived inside every act of compassion that expected nothing in return. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the ocean, Keanu placed the first anonymous envelope on the bookstore bench before quietly walking away. He never waited to see who would find it, because he finally understood the lesson that had changed his life. Kindness doesn't need applause. It only needs someone willing to begin. And somewhere, perhaps only moments later, another stranger would notice a simple white envelope waiting quietly on an empty bench. Inside would be just one sentence: "If kindness has reached you, don't let it end with you." The story of the wooden box was over, but the story of hope was only beginning.